Hello, everyone out there, and welcome back to my channel. And for anyone that is new to this channel, I want to say welcome to you as well. And so I want to go right into the message that God gave me on today. And the title of my message today is God is working it out on your behalf. This is something that you have to know for yourself. And so I want to start off this message by talking about Gideon. Now, Gideon, the story of Gideon can be found in the Old Testament in the book of Judges. Now, Gideon was a man that lived in a time of much turmoil. It was a lot of turmoil going on. And so, Gideon, at the time, Gideon seemed to be a man that didn't have a purpose. Seemed like he didn't have nothing to look forward to. Neither did he have a vision for his future, because the future looked bleak at that time. And this all was happening before he had an encounter with an angel, because God sent the angel to him, and to let him know that, yes, God had something for him to do. But before that encounter, like I said, his people were going through a lot of hardship and affliction, and it was their own fault, because see, they had disobeyed God. And see, God had actually warned them before all of this even happened about what would happen to them if they became disobedient. And so this was a time of chastisement for his people. And so Gideon, like I said, Gideon was really in a hopeless situation. But God, when he had that encounter with God, I'm sure, and I just thought about Gideon probably was praying and just wanting God to send somebody to save them, so that their situation could get better, just looking outside himself, not even thinking that God would actually choose him as the man for the job, because a lot of times we be the same way, we be having a problem that we dealing with, or either we see a problem that need to be solved, and we feel like, we might be praying, God, send somebody to help, or do this or the other, and then God might decide that it's you. I mean, it happens all the time that, God might decide that you the one that I want to use to solve this particular problem. And so this was in the case of Gideon. Gideon was God's chosen man. And basically, his people at that time, they were basically going in a cycle. If you read through the book of Judges, they basically went in a cycle. They would go through a cycle where they would be obedient as long as the judge was over them. They would keep the covenant with God. But once the judge was gone, they would go right back to their sinful ways. And this, as I said, was a cycle repeated over and over again. But now this was a time where God was going to restore his people again by sending Gideon. And it made me just think about, because like I said, a lot of times, we be looking for God to use somebody else in a situation, and God, he will choose you. He wants to use you. And so this has been about 14 years ago. I worked at this particular mall. And when I got hired there to be the housekeeper. And when I got hired at the mall, I went at the time when it had just opened. So this was a fresh, brand new mall. So when anything is new, it draws a large crowd of people. So this mall was extremely busy. I mean, when I say a lot of people would be up in that mall, it would be a lot of people at all times. And so, that means the housekeepers, they really had a job to do. And I was actually good at what I did. I was good at cleaning the mall, And so, after working there for about a few months, they had several supervisors, that worked with us, but they needed a break over the weekend. So they needed somebody on the weekend to be a fill-in supervisor. And so I guess they was trying to come up with who they was gonna use, and so they decided that they was gonna choose me. And I remember at the time, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it because the only thing I was had got that job for was because I had got a car note and I wanted to pay for that car. You know, I wanted extra money to pay for my car. And so I wasn't looking to be promoted there, anything. And so they, like I said, my boss, he came to me, and like I said, he asked me, did I want to take the position? And I told him no. And matter of fact, I told him no about 2 or 3 times, but he was persistent. He was persistent that I was the person for the job. And not knowing at that time that this was God. This was God, initiating this position, because it would put me in a position where I had to talk to people more. Because at that time, I really wasn't no talkative person. Talk to people more up close and personal. And so it was teaching me to come out of my shell. This position would help me to come out of my shell for was talking to people, because I'm not saying I was shy, but I just wasn't no person that just be talking, want to be talking to people like that. And so once I took the position, though, the position was easy for me. A lot of times the regular supervisors that was there, all during the week, they would get overwhelmed when people would not show up on the job. They would panic and call the boss, because they didn't really know what to do. But I never called the boss. It's just because they didn't know how to delegate or use the people that was already there. But I did. I used the people that was already there. I never called the boss. It just was easy for me, and we would get that job. We would get the job done. And like I said, on the weekends it would be extremely busy, but I found the job to be very easy. So a lot of times we don't know what we are capable of doing until it's time to do it. Until we step out and try something new. And so this was new for me, but it actually ended up being easy. And so I started off being a fill-in supervisor on the weekend, but eventually I became the full-time supervisor on this job. And it was all a part of God's purpose for me. So a lot of times, don't be scared to, step out and try something new, even if you feel nervous about it. Just step out and do it anyway, because you never know what's on the other side of you stepping out. And then I thought about another time when I was in grade school. I had to been in about the 8th grade, and we was having a contest for the schools. Several schools were having a contest where they had a drawing contest, and it was about the presidents, and so we had to draw pictures. And I remember this girl in my class, she could draw very well. She was very good at drawing, and so I just knew that she was going to win. And I remember at the time, back in, see, a lot of people in the new generation might not know about encyclopedias, because encyclopedias was a set of books. They was informative, had a lot of information in you about different things. Because at that time we didn't have no computers. People weren't really using computers at that time, so we would use books. We would use books, so you actually had to read. And so that's where I had got my picture from. I got it out the encyclopedia. And it was a picture of Abraham Lincoln that I drew. And to my surprise, I won the trophy for my school. I don't know why. I just thought the other girl was just a much better at drawing than I was, but I won the trophy for my school. So I'm just saying, a lot of times we have gifts and talents that's hidden within us that we don't even know until we step out and try something new, as I said. And so I want to read a little bit about Gideon. A lot of times when God tells us to step out and do something, even though we might not be comfortable with what he's telling us to do, God, he already knows that we are equipped for the job. And this was the case of Gideon. So I want to go to Judges, the 6th chapter. I want to read 1 through 7. And then I want to skip down. I want to read 11 through 16. And so it says, and the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord delivered them into the hand of Midian 7 years. And the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel because of the Midianites. The children of Israel made them the dens which are in the mountains and caves and strongholds. So they basically were trying to hide from the Midianites. And so it was when Israel had sown that the Midianites came up, and Amalekites and the children of the east, even they came up against them. And they encamped against them and destroyed the increase of the earth till thou come into Gaza, and left no substance for Israel, neither sheep nor ox nor ass. So they took all the increase that they had. So they were very much, they were in a period of suffering. For they came up with their cattle and their tents, and they came as grasshoppers for the multitude, for both they and their camels were without number, and they entered into the land to destroy it. And Israel was greatly impoverished because of the Midianites. And the children of Israel cried unto the Lord. Like I said, they would go through a time of obedience, long as the judge was there, and then once the judge was gone, they basically went back to their sinful ways, and then they would begin to cry out to God, and then God would answer them again. See, because they were still God's people. And so even though God was chastising them, God still had a plan for them. And so it says in that 7th verse, and it came to pass when the children of Israel cried unto the Lord because of the Midianites, that the Lord sent a prophet unto the children of Israel, which said unto them, Thus said the Lord God of Israel, I brought you up from Egypt, and brought you forth out of the house of bondage. But I'm not going to go into all he said. You can read that later, but I'm going to skip down to, I want to skip down to the 11th verse, and it says, because basically he was reminding them of what he had already done for them. And it says in that 11th verse, it says, And there came an angel of the Lord and sat under an oak, which was in Ophrah, that pertained to Joash, the Asbizarite, if I'm saying it right, and his son Gideon threshed wheat by the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him and said unto him, The Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor. And Gideon said unto him, O my Lord, if the Lord be with us, why then is all this befallen us? And where be all his miracles, which our fathers told us of, saying, Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord hath forsaken us, and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites. But God had not forsaken them. God was just they were being disciplined. But like I said, they were still God's chosen people. And then 14th verse says, And the Lord looked upon him and said, Go in thy might, and thou shalt save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have not I sent thee? And see, if you read the story, you will see that Gideon was having a very hard time believing this, that actually he was the man for the job. But God kept encouraging him that, yes, I have chosen you. That 15th verse says, And he said unto him, O my Lord, wherewith shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. And the Lord said unto him, Surely I will be with thee, and thou shalt smite the Midianites as one man. And so it took some persuasion for him to finally believe that what God was saying to him was really true, because he could not see himself being a person to lead them to victory. And so a lot of times when God tells us something, a lot of times he will confirm his word over and over again as encouragement, as encouragement to us, as he did with him. It talks about, in the 7th chapter, it talks about the 7th chapter, the 9th through the 15th verse. Because he had encouraged him several times. He told him to put out a fleece. Then the water was on the ground. Then the water was dry. But you can read about that part in your private time, because I'm not going to read all that, because this story it's not real long, but it does. I'm just going to read a few scriptures. And so I want to go to that 7th chapter. I want to read that 9th through the 15th verse. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what was going on during this time. And it says in the 9th verse, it says, "And it came to pass the same night that the Lord said unto him, Arise, get thee down into the host, for I have delivered it into thy hand. But if thou fear to go down, go thou with Purah, thy servant, down to the host." So he was saying, take somebody with you, and thou shalt hear what they say. And afterward thy hands be strengthened to go down into the host. Then went he down with Purah, his servant, into the outside of the armed men that were in the host. And the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the children of the east lay along in the valley like grasshoppers for the multitude. And their camels were without number as the sand by the seaside for the multitude. But when Gideon was come, behold, there was a man that told a dream unto his fellow, and said, Behold, I dreamed a dream, and lo, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the host of the Midian, and came into a tent, and smote it that it fell, and overturned it, that the tent lay alone. And his fellow answered and said, This is nothing else save the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel, for into his hand have God delivered Midian and all the hosts. And it was so, when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and interpretation thereof, that he worshipped and returned into the host of Israel, and said, Arise, for the Lord hath delivered into your hand the host of Midian. So God let somebody else have a dream and told Gideon through the dream exactly what God was going to do. And so God confirmed to him. And so after that, Gideon was ready for the fight. And so a lot of times God will confirm over and over again what he is telling you to do, to let you know that I'm with you and that this thing is going to come to pass. And so in the end, God worked it out for their good. He worked it out on their behalf. And see, God is also working your situation out as well. Everybody's going through different things. And everybody has something that they want God to work out for them. And so God is working. Even when it seems like he's not working, God is always at work. And in Job, I want to go to Job, the 23rd chapter and the 8th verse. This is not a very long message. It's just a word of encouragement. The 23rd and the 8th verse. And it says, Behold, I go forward, but he is not there, and backward, but I cannot perceive him. On the left hand where he doeth work, but I cannot behold him. He hideth himself on the right hand, that I cannot see. That 10th verse says, But he knoweth the way that I take. And when he have tried me, I shall come forth as pure gold. And all the things that Job went through, in the end, God worked it out for him. And if you have never read this story of Job, I encourage you to do so. And also, I want to read in Psalms, the 27th chapter and the 14th verse. Psalms 27 verse. Psalms the 27th chapter, the 13th and the 14th verse. And it says, I had fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. The 14th verse says, wait on the Lord and be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thy heart. Wait, I said, on the Lord. So be encouraged. Amen. Bye bye for now.